Hello and welcome. I am Exit Light and this is my channel. And today we're going to talk about some of history's creepiest doctors. We're going to start off with Walter Freeman, who happened to be the father of lobotomy. Before we get started, if you would please give this video a thumbs up, and if you are not subscribed, if you would like to be, please do so, and if you ring that bell, then you'll be notified when my content goes live. Alright, let's get started talking about Walter. I either saw a documentary about this, or I saw it on Drunk History. They're not really the same thing. Both informational in their own way. Walter Freeman. Freeman was an American physician and advocate of psychosurgery, but because he had no surgical training, he initially had to work with other surgeons. Along with Dr. James Watts, he became the first in the U.S. to perform prefrontal lobotomy by craniotomy in the operating room. Looking for a quicker and easier way to perform the procedure, he perfected the transorbital lobotomy. In this procedure, the patient was first rendered unconscious by electroshock. Initially, Freeman used an actual ice pick from his own kitchen. He then went on to create and use the, I'm going to butcher this, so please bear with me, leucotome, until it could not withstand the stress and broke off in a patient's skull. Nice. Good job. He then designed and implemented the stronger orbitoclast. These instruments were inserted into the back of the eye orbits and then hammered into the skull. Like they went in through the eye where your tear duct is and then started hammering on your skull. And then, if that wasn't enough, they were wiggled back and forth in order to sever connections to the prefrontal cortex in the frontal lobes of the brain. This procedure often left patients in a vegetative state or reduced their behavior to childlike. It is estimated that 490 people died as a result. Freeman took his newly modified procedure on a national campaign in his van, which he dubbed his lobotomobile. Oh my goodness. He would demonstrate the surgery to doctors working at state-run institutions. Sometimes he would show off by ice-picking both eye sockets at once, with an ice pick in each hand. What a party trick. His most notorious surgery was performed on Rosemary Kennedy. Of those Kennedys, she was JFK's sister, and she was left in a vegetative state at the age of 23. One of his former patients, Howard Doley, went on to write the book My Lobotomy, discussing his experience with the procedure at the age of 12. Freeman allowed the media to watch a procedure in which a patient died when the ice pick slipped into the brain. He was noted to act indifferently and move on to the next patient. His license was eventually revoked after the death of a patient. Freeman died of cancer in 1972. Here's a quote about Freeman by Ole Erison. The ice pick lobotomy was performed by Freeman with a recklessness bordering on lunacy, touring the country like a traveling evangelist. In most cases, this procedure was nothing more than a gross and unwanted mutilization carried out by a self-righteous zealot. All right, moving on. Dr. Michael Swango. From a young age, Swango showed an unusual interest in violent deaths, as well as the Holocaust. In fact, he kept scrapbooks of gruesome pictures of fatal car wrecks and crimes. During his senior year in college, Swango wrote his chemistry thesis on the poisoning death of Bulgarian writer Georgy Markov, and since that time became obsessed with poisons, especially those that could be used as silent killers. During Swango's third year of medical school, at least 5 patients died shortly after being seen by him. Classmates called him Double O, referring to James Bond and the License to Kill slogan. Nice. At the same time, Swango took a job as an ambulance driver, but was soon not allowed direct contact with patients for an unknown reason. Yet, he was allowed to secure a neurosurgery residency, but was failed in his last 8 weeks of medical school because he failed to show up. Upon Swango hiring a lawyer, the school was afraid of a lawsuit, so they allowed him to postpone his graduation for 1 year, but gave him a strict set of rules to follow. And like I said, these people are nothing but rule followers, clearly. Swango buckled down and graduated with residency positions and secured himself in surgery and then neurosurgery to follow. Shortly after graduation, he was fired from the ambulance company after he told a man in the midst of a heart attack to walk to his car and have his wife drive him, which was Swango's literal job, by the way. Shortly after starting his internship, a series of unexplained deaths among wealthy patients occurred on the wing to which he was assigned. One of the patients who survived reported to the nurses that Swango injected him with medication just minutes before they started having a seizure. An investigation was started, but he was exonerated as the hospital aimed to minimize any fallout. So Swango was moved to a new wing, of course, where a series of unexplained deaths soon followed. Shocking. Additionally, fellow residents fell violently ill after he brought in fried chicken for everyone. Oddly, Swango was not invited back for his second year, but instead, he attained a license to practice medicine in Ohio in 1984 and took a job with another ambulance company that did not check his background. He exhibited odd behavior, including frequently showing off his macabre scrapbooks, inappropriate and strange comments about death and dying, and being unusually excited by CNN news regarding a mass killing and horrific accidents. Again, Swango brought food to his co-workers. This time it was donuts, and they became violently ill, requiring several to seek medical care at the hospital. People became suspicious when a series of similar episodes followed and decided to get tested. Several tested positive for poison. Swango was arrested, sentenced to 5 years, and had his license revoked. How long was he in prison, you ask? Well, 2 years. And then he moved to Virginia and took a job as a career counselor. Soon, co-workers suddenly began suffering severe nausea and headaches. Swango was fired in 1989, and then he took a job as a lab tech, but quit after a wave of illnesses among his co-workers occurred, leaving an executive in a near comatose state. Weird. In 1990, he legally changed his name and forged documents about his conviction. Eventually, he landed a residency position in internal medicine in South Dakota in 1992. Things were going well until he decided to join the AMA. Someone was a friend of the dean at the University of South Dakota and informed him of the truth of Swango's background. At the same time, the Justice Files aired a 2020 interview he had done while he was in prison. So he was fired, right? He was fired. No, they asked him to resign. His girlfriend was shocked, and soon afterwards, she began to suffer from violent headaches until she broke up with him. He then lied his way into a psychiatry program at the University of New York at Stony Brook. Has this made anyone else decide to never go to a hospital or a doctor again? On his internal medicine rotations, patients began to mysteriously die. Swango's girlfriend kept in communication with him until she discovered that he had emptied her checking account, and she committed suicide by shooting herself in the chest the very next day. Her mother took revenge on Swango by sending a letter to his dean, getting him fired. The dean sent the letter to every medical school and over 1,000 teaching hospitals in the United States, warning them of Swango's past and his deception. After being fired, Swango went underground while the FBI searched for him. He resurfaced in 1994 as Jack Kirk. He was working at a company in Atlanta that allowed him to access all the city's water supply. And what could go wrong? The FBI contacted him, and he was fired, and then he vanished again. He soon showed up in Africa, taking a job in Zimbabwe as a doctor. It soon became apparent that he was untrained to perform even basic procedures. Patients again began mysteriously dying. Police turned up hundreds of various drugs and poisons in his home. Swango eventually fled when it was apparent that evidence was mounting against him. In 1997, he entered the U.S. en route to Saudi Arabia, where he was arrested by immigration officials and sent to New York to remain in prison until his trial. He pled guilty, right? Yes. He pled guilty to fraud. Just before he was released, he was charged with murder and fraud. Knowing that Zimbabwe was fighting to have him extradited and he would face the death penalty there, he pled guilty. He is currently serving 3 consecutive life sentences at ADX Supermax Federal Prison. That's our last one for today, and I hope you don't have nightmares. But I wanted to read you something real quick. Real-life monsters come in all walks of life. Don't assume that someone with a job requiring trust is, in fact, trustworthy. Don't expect evil to come at you in obvious form, because it doesn't. It hides under cover and is often disguised in a pleasant package. Keep your eyes open and trust your gut. That tingle down your spine may just save your life. Thank you for coming, and good night.